Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Bauman. Today, I welcome back my strong and steady ministry friend, Cassia Elder. And you might want to buckle your seatbelts because we are going to talk about getting prepared for Christmas. Cassia has a new book that focuses on cultivating a restful, not stressful season, and how the key to having that, a restful, not stressful season, lies in a little proactive planning. Christmas is coming, and even in this time of COVID, many of us will find ourselves juggling extra commitments and responsibilities. How do we make decisions now so that we can set realistic expectations that position us for a peaceful experience rather than an internal meltdown? Let's listen in. Hello, Steady On community, and welcome to this Stronger Together conversation. I'm Angie Bauman, and with me again is a friend of the Steady On podcast and my ministry friend, Cassia Elder. Cassia, welcome. Thank you for joining me again for this chat.
Thank you so much for having me, Angie. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm excited to chat with you again. Cassia has a new project coming out. We're going to start like the holiday talking as we chat because, ladies, I don't know if you know, but it's nearly Halloween, which means, Cassia, how would you describe what's about to happen to us, really? Because I think of this like snowball that I get in, like I'm in the middle of it and it's just rolling and getting bigger and I can't get out. That's like the image that comes to my mind, but it can feel like that as the holiday season starts to tap on our door. I don't know. How would you describe it?
Well, I also think that despite that happening, despite Christmas decorations being in the store right now,
yes,
at the same time, and Christmas is December 25th every single year, but despite that, it also sneaks up on us.
Yeah.
Like we're overwhelmed with it for 6 months. And at the same time, we're like, oh, how is it Christmas already?
Yes, so true. Both are true. That is so crazy. But Cassia is an author and a speaker, and she's founder of a group called Jesus Sisters, which I'm so excited to be a part of. And she's also a wife and a mom and a micro farmer and a ministry friend. Yeah. And so she has a new project coming out called The 12 Ways of Christmas, and this is what we're really going to camp on, how to cultivate a restful, not stressful season. So I'm excited to get into this because I will say, and my listeners know this, rest is something the Lord works on my heart about all the time. And I think I make progress, but then sometimes a voice of wisdom in my life speaks into my life and indicates I don't know how to do it very well at all. So this is not something I'm naturally good at by any means. And a part of it for me is, well, twofold. I think a striving towards perfectionism and also like this belief that I'm only valuable if I'm producing. And so, that's kind of a bad combination, I guess, with, sprinkling a lot of other things too. But I want to ask you, what's kind of the backstory of this book? Because I'm guessing, I know our brains are similar enough that I'm thinking you can relate to some of the things I'm just saying. But what were some of your Christmas pasts, if you will, like? And how did you find yourself sort of like repeating behaviors and then finding yourself with unmet expectations? Would you just share with us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And yes, as you were saying, all of those things about, perfectionism and productivity that so resonated with my soul. So really, when I was a child, Christmas really was the highlight of the entire year. It really was the best thing that happened. On Christmas Eve, we would put on our, fancy church clothes, our very best, and my shiny little patent leather shoes and my fluffy party dress. And we would get all dressed up and go to grandma's house. And she just made sure that the day was completely filled with wonder. Everything glistened and there was Bing Crosby on the record player and, all those Christmas favorites. And there was every food that you could imagine. It was just this huge buffet and then presents piled high, taking up a third of the living room. And it was just a magical, amazing, wonderful time. And then on Christmas morning, we would open our gifts at home and spend the whole day in our pajamas. And so it really was an amazing time for me as a child. And so even early in my adulthood, and I had nieces and nephews, and I wanted to start, kind of mimicking some of those things and buying the best gifts and making sure everything was special. But then, especially when I had a child of my own and we have grandchildren, that I just wanted to recreate the wonder of Christmas that I had as a child. And so I just strove to do that, to buy the perfect gifts and to buy more and more because it wanted to top the year before, and to make everything perfect, and perfection in my home and in the decorations and in the food, and making sure everybody was where they were supposed to be at the times. And there were so many places to be. So there was conflict sometimes between being able to get to all of the places and spending enough time with everyone so that it felt fair. And so it just became so overwhelming to try to create that picture perfect idea of what I had of Christmas. And then I always felt let down afterwards because I wasn't present with people and I didn't enjoy the season. I was too busy trying to make it perfect to even experience it. I think it's because of this legalistic tendency that I have that there's only one right way or one good way to do things. And so if I'm doing it and it's not working out, it's because I need to try harder and put in more effort.
That's what I was going to say. Somehow I believe this lie that if I just work a little harder, I can make it fill in the blank perfect, probably. But yeah, I can make it right. I can make it the way that I want to be. Oh, that fell apart, or that conflict happened, or that gift didn't get bought the way I wanted it to, or whatever, or didn't get shipped on time, fill in the blank, because I didn't do it right. I didn't work hard enough.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I repeated those patterns. And even though, in other areas of my life, and my husband says this over and over and over, that insanity is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I knew that applied to different areas of my life. But in this area, I was like, well, I'm just not trying hard enough. I just got to try harder, start earlier, start more.
Earlier. Yes. Yes. Yeah. My kids make fun of me because I do actually shop most of the year because I get things on sale or with coupons or things like that because I'm frugal, but also because I have learned over the years that I actually enjoy it more if I have spaced that part out. Like I like to approach when the Thanksgiving is over and like the Christmas season for real starts, I kind of like to be done shopping by then because then I have time like to do other things that are because it's already busy enough, for me anyway, and maybe it's partly too, because that's not my favorite part of the whole thing. But yeah, my kids laugh at me because I do kind of start, they were laughing the other day because I'm like, they're like, I don't think you've started shopping yet. I know. I'm like, it's kind of late, isn't it? That I haven't started shopping.
So yes, I usually start after Christmas when the things go on clearance sale that were Christmas items. And and I think there can be a balance with that. It can be, you can be obsessing, or one of the mistakes I've made in the past is buying early, but then I'm done and I still keep buying. Oh. And so, so there has to be a balance with that where it's not, for me, waiting till the last minute because then I'm super stressed about finding things. But you're right. It's being a good steward of the funds that God's given us when we are able to, if that brings us joy, to find things on clearance and buy things when you have the coupon and, at the sale price.
So if you had to describe those Christmases in those younger years when your son was, littler and you were newer in your marriage and those kind of things, what are a couple of words maybe you'd use to describe just kind of what those Christmases felt like?
Really stressful and chaotic. And frankly, it was, I discovered that it was mostly in me and then the way I reacted to other people, so it was not that everyone around me was making Christmas miserable. It was that I had these expectations. And I heard this in a Bible study one time, and I just wish that I could remember who said it, because I know it was a brilliant person that said expectations are preconceived disappointments. And really, when we just build things up to being an image of what we want it to be, and then we get disappointed when they're not what we want them to be, rather than experiencing things as God brings them to us and finding, joy as they come.
Yeah. I want to ask another follow-up question too, to what you were saying at first, because you talked about the wonder when you were a child. And I'm wondering about that, because now looking back on that, Because there is something so like about birthdays and Christmas and some of those things when we're young that can create these magical, what, like this, like it's so separate from all the other days of the year. But do you know what that is now? Like, because obviously as adults, we look at that and our grandmothers or mothers or whoever might have done that for us, they didn't have a magic wand. They were just women like us. And so what was the wonder that you were catching from them? Really? Do you know?
You know what I really think about that as part of that is that it is about childhood, and it's about not being at that time not being marred by the world, really. Because when I look back on, days we went to the beach when I was a child, or when the flowers would begin to bloom, and the things that I took delight in as a child, some of the reasons because they were new experiences, and then I mean, of course, when you get older, you're the one that has to make all of the delightful foods, and you're the one that has to, like, you don't get showered with gifts. Now, when I'm an adult, I go with a trunk full of gifts and come home with two, and because you're not the child anymore, so you're not the person being showered with with the attention, and you're not the center, I guess, of it. And so we grow up and we're not the center, and that feels bad to us,
Yes. And I think one of the things that I have learned is sometimes, whether it's Christmas or other things, we want to create or recreate a feeling that we had for our children. But I think we don't understand, or we don't think about like what created that feeling in us. That other people were doing for us. And so actually we only have to serve and pay attention and spend time with and connect with that child through a special event. They're very happy when they get an expensive gift. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts on this. I don't think that's really the key to creating a sense of wonder around the holiday.
And I think the thing is, so I think that we need to rediscover our wonder as adults in many ways, and allow the wonder of Christmas to affect us in ways that it does. And sometimes we don't know what the other person is experiencing. I didn't articulate to my grandma. I didn't know how to articulate, like, this is the magical feeling that I'm feeling, until later in life when I'm like, why don't I feel that? But you don't know what the children around you are experiencing, and how there are times when my son tells me about something that was such a special moment to him, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize, because I'm not feeling that. So I just make the assumption that you're not feeling that. But I think gratitude and learning to engage in that wonder, to remind ourselves about all of the things that God, puts in front of us, to we allow that to wear off sometimes.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about when your heart began to change in this. Like, what was there a year? Was there a circumstance? Did something happen? What did the Lord use in your life, Cassia, to say, I'd like for you to like this more, right? That's what I imagine kind of the message is. I would like for this not to be stressful for you. What was that like for you?
Yes. Well, I know that Jesus is absolutely in the business still today of doing miracles and of instantaneously changing everything for us. But more often in life, and I learned this in manufacturing, sustainable change happens in small incremental improvements. So generally, it's one of the reasons that New Year's resolutions never stick for most people, because we try to change everything all at once and put all of our energy into everything. And then we find that we can't do everything all at once. But if we choose one small sustainable change, then it makes a difference. And so I really saw over what the first year was, really 10 years ago, when I started going back to church. And that Christmas, our church did Operation Christmas Child, and they participated in the, stuffing the boxes. And I got one for my son, and he chose gifts for a boy, and I got one for me, and I chose gifts for a girl. And that, I don't know that it's the first time in my life, but it's the first time that I remember giving a gift selflessly, giving a gift to someone who either I wasn't obligated to give a gift to because they were my boss or the male person or some relationship, or that was going to reciprocate with a gift. I gave a selfless gift to someone who I would not see receive the gift, and who was not going to thank me for the gift, and I would never see the fruit of that. And so really that was a little spark for me. The first small incremental change was of selfless giving. And then the next year, my women's Bible study group did this tiny little book. It's called Christmas Is Not Your Birthday by Mike Slaughter. And really the message is that, we make Christmas all about us, like it's our birthday, but it's Jesus' birthday, right? And so we just looked for ways to make Christmas more Christ-centered. And our church did another, our ladies group stuffed stockings for women that were in transitional housing. And again, we did the shoe boxes. And I decided I wanted to do something in my home to make Christ more the center of our gathering. So we had a birthday party for Jesus, and it was just simply we had a cake. I bought a cheap little nativity set and put it on top of the cake, and we sang "Happy Birthday" to Jesus, and it had become a family tradition since then. And so it's those small incremental changes, and really it was over the course of 5 years or 6 years before my family came to the point where we were having this conversation I talk about in the book, where we just looked at each other and said, this is the best Christmas we ever had. And that's really what sparked the book. When I got home from that and the new year started, and I thought, I need to document this, and I need to discover and unpack what made this the best Christmas that we ever had, so that hopefully I wouldn't repeat all those wrong behaviors from the years before that made Christmas so stressful, and that I could not recreate, because that's problematic when you just try to recreate the same thing, but I could take away key learnings and best practices from the year that would cause it to be a new best Christmas the next year.
Do you notice, I love that your family was able to look at each other and feel that together. That's big. That's the work of the Holy Spirit, I think. Yes. But what would you say was missing? Because like you talked about like an intentionality on more selfless giving, and like a tradition like the birthday cake. There was a shift of focus. I feel that. Absolutely. In what you're talking about. What were some things maybe that were missing that year, or around that, in that process, some things that used to be important that maybe aren't as much anymore to your family?
About being a more Christ-centered, others-focused Christmas, and caring for yourself in a balanced way. So it really takes that, the greatest commandment, to love the Lord with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So it's about loving God first and most, loving others well, and not forgetting about ourselves. I think that the world pushes us to this self-care that becomes selfish and really narcissistic. And that's not what God wants, but he also doesn't want us to forget caring for ourselves as the temple of the Holy Spirit, and caring for our spiritual and emotional and physical needs during that season. And that's something that also happens. And so it's all of those things. So the 12 ways are really 4 ways of putting Christ at the center of your Christmas and making him the most important thing. And then there are 4 ways about loving others well during the season. And then 4 ways to not forget about yourself, not to make yourself the center, but to care for yourself in a balanced way. So that's what it's all about.
I love that. And I love that you brought that greatest commandment in, because I think a lot of times I have not a different perspective than you, but a different perspective, I think, well, maybe a little bit than you, but than some people, because so much of what the Lord has taught me is about loving myself. And so I kind of tended to, because that was my greatest struggle. Like, and he's taught me that you can only love people. This makes me emotional, because he's taught me so much about it. You can only love people really, or love him to the degree that you will agree with how he sees you. Like that's something that I believe, and yes. So I do absolutely agree with what you're saying, because the culture we live in is so like me-centered. Do this for yourself, take care about yourself, whatever satisfies you, whatever makes you feel good, whatever. That's not what we're talking about at all here. However, I will say, for those of us who struggle to look at ourselves and see an image of what God delights in, can I say it that way? Right.
Absolutely.
Then I think that can be part of the reason we struggle with the whole Christmas thing, because when we don't have that, whatever we've tried to do will sort of come back void almost, because there's
Absolutely.
really this lack of contentment just in our own self. So I'm so glad that you brought that out, because that's a really, for me, I think too, that's a really important part of it, because a lot of times when I'm feeling stressed or when I'm feeling these like negative emotions that you're talking about around a holiday, really it's the holiday, the Christmas season, that's bringing to the surface some of the things we're feeling all the time anyway, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
As Christians, we want to run far from the pride and those fleshly responses of the world, but we run often too far the other way to self-neglect and self-hatred, which is, God doesn't want us to hate ourselves. He wants us to see ourselves the way he sees us, and love ourselves, not because we think we're good and we're great and we're awesome and all of those things, but because he loves us, and because he loves us first. That's also the only way we can love others well. Absolutely. When we receive his love. So it's about receiving his love and acknowledging his love for me means that I should not neglect myself because he doesn't want me to do that.
Right. Yeah. And especially in a season like, the holiday season, when we know going into it, there's going to be extra demands. There's going to be extra demands. And again, especially if you live in a family where there's tension, you mentioned like, conflict or tension, where everything is supposed to look like a Target commercial and everything doesn't, right?
Exactly.
Like I don't have those happy people around my table. If that's what you already know is coming, then it's harder to face it, or harder to lean into it with a sense of like, this is going to be a positive experience, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe for those listening that are like, oh, I'm just already dreading this and I wish I could sleep through it, because there's some of our friends are like that. I've had years like that. I will not deny it. There are times. Can you offer just maybe like some practical advice? What are some, as you said, incremental steps that you made that you found helpful, or that what kind of permission slips could she write for herself, as this, it's not long now, and we'll start really preparing and seeing it and getting all the signals from our culture. Can I say it that way? That we're not doing enough, or we're not doing it right. Or if we just worked harder or just spent more money, then we would have the Target commercial Christmas or whatever, So what are some practical things we can do or say to ourselves, permission slips we can write for ourselves, something like that?
Absolutely. I love that you use that term of permission slips. So I am a nerd for lists. If you look around my house and on my phone, and there are lists everywhere. There are lists about other lists. I'm a nerd for lists. So there are a couple of times in the book, and I know that's not what resonates with everyone, but where I invite the reader to write a list. And on this particular list that I'm going to share, I would split your paper, fold it in half, and this admonition, I guess, the encouragement that I give is to do what brings delight, not dread. And I know that as adults, as human beings, we don't get to just do that. We don't get to just say, it brings me delight to snuggle on the couch and drink hot cocoa and watch Netflix, and I will not do the dishes and the laundry and cook meals for my family or go to work today. So it's a balanced way of doing that. But on one side of the sheet, I would write down, what are you dreading about Christmas? If we don't process that thing, we just have this overwhelming sense of dread, but we don't even really articulate or identify, what is it that I'm dreading about Christmas? So write down the things that you're dreading about Christmas. And then on the other side of the paper, write what brings you delight at Christmas, or what would bring you delight. Maybe it's something you haven't done for years, but like viewing Christmas lights, or going to a Christmas concert, Christmas Eve candlelight service, Christmas caroling, just different things that you could add to that list. And then I just want to encourage you to do more of what brings delight and do less of what brings dread. So we can't stop doing the things that bring you dread, but if shopping till you drop brings you stress, shop online, give gift cards. People want it should be about spending time with people and giving with love, and not just out of obligation. And so if that gives you stress, then find a way around that shopping portion of it. If wrapping the gifts brings you stress, you can purchase gift bags. It's okay. Or pay someone. My mother-in-law paid one of the kids to wrap Christmas presents ever for the 2 decades I've known her, so think about those things that cause you stress at the holidays, and then look for ways. Maybe there are things you can't not do, but look for ways to mitigate the things, and to do less of the things that you dread, or at least to make them less. And then those things, give yourself permission, like you said, the permission slip, schedule it to do something that brings you joy at Christmas. So those things that you delight and that help you to find that sense of wonder, not wonder in the experience, but in that God's presence allows us to create those experiences. And so, just that it would be my practical one small incremental change of mitigating the things that you dread and engaging more in the things that you delight.
I love that, because probably there are things for all of us we look forward to and don't, as we're sort of making that holiday list, that checklist of responsibilities, if you will. I know, like, wrapping Christmas presents is something. So I use gift bags all the time, but I don't like using them for Christmas. And it's because they get unwrapped too fast. Like when I've worked so hard, to like do presents and all that stuff. And we have that family time and we do one at a time. And we're one of those families, and everybody looks and watches other people open, and I want it to last. And so I wrap with boxes, and all that stuff, but it takes a long time. And several years ago now, I got like annoyed about how long it was taking, and I was thinking about shifting to gift bags and all this. But instead, what I did was, I love the movie A Christmas Carol, with little Ralphie, if you like that one. Yeah. And I have a copy of that on DVD, and I wrap, and it doesn't get old for me, because I love this. I watch movies over and over again. So I have some that are just like, they just keep me company. I know them so well. But anyway, all that to say, I'll put the movie in and I will wrap that long. When the movie ends, I put it away, and even if I do that sometimes 3, 4, 5 times, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then I'm like, no, I don't, if I wrap longer than that, I get cranky and I get kind of like, why do I do this or whatever? But if I have that company on and I love that movie, or I don't know, if you like something else like that, I just, find those little ways, I guess. Yes. It's important to me to wrap them all. Like I do. I'm so glad on Christmas when they're all wrapped. But I was finding that it was like stealing the joy of having them wrapped, because I was grumpy about the wrapping anyway. Yes. So sometimes I think if we look at something that we don't want to do, but we need to get it done, whatever that it is, how do we move that column right to how can delight and dread share space even?
Absolutely. Yes. Right? I loved how you said it, doing something that you delight while you're doing something that is important to you, but it seems like a really big task. It's not even maybe that you dread doing it, but it's like a big task, and it brings you joy. The result brings you joy. Yes. So when you consider how, this task, like I don't love doing the dishes, but having clean dishes to eat off of is great for my family. And so I do that with the joy in mind of what that is.
Yes. And recognizing too, what things you might have been doing just because you thought you should. And actually you don't have to. I mean, if you really, I love that, the idea of like writing things down. It's like the pros and the cons kind of list, I love having my tree, and we put it up really early. I love looking at it for a long time, but several years ago, that's the only I don't do any other decorating. You know what I figured out? I don't even like it. I don't like putting it up. I don't like taking it down. It doesn't really make me happy. I just want my tree, so, but if you love decorating your house, set aside time so it's not stressful. Right. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm, because we're all so different. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And make the time by mitigating something else that you really didn't
that you don't like
to do.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And that will make that more joyful as well. When you make take less time to do the things that you really didn't enjoy doing. Occasionally I like to make a big meal. I like to cook occasionally, but I wanted to create this big buffet of food that my grandma had with 20 different side dishes and 13 desserts. And I found that my family, it didn't matter to my family. Uh-huh. They didn't care. And in fact, I had all of these leftovers. The kids were too excited. They just wanted to go open their presents. And so one of the big changes was, instead of doing that elaborate meal, we just sat on the kitchen floor or the living room floor on a blanket and had a pizza picnic. And it was delightful because they ate their pizza quick and then got to open their presents, which is what they were waiting for. And then I didn't have the mess in the kitchen that I dread. You know, I loved having the big meal, but I didn't love the mess afterwards.
All the prep and the shopping and the planning and it's a big job. It's a big job. Yeah.
So, and then for some people though, that big meal is something that's so important to their family. Right. It's a super important part of your tradition. And so don't stop the things that you love if you're actually finding joy in it and your family enjoys as well. But maybe you get to a point where it's too much and you ask your family to pitch in with side dishes, or, you know, there's innumerable ways to look at what for you, because we're each unique, brings delight and dread, and to balance those things in your
and
life.
It's okay too, I think, to give yourself permission that it's not always going to be exactly the same. Like I know, you know, when my kids were smaller, there were certain things that I did certain ways when my kids were little, and even just getting out and shopping, where I bought more things like in brick and mortar stores and getting out and shopping. It was really stressful to try to get all that done because I had these littles and I didn't have a lot of time. And my husband and I started going away for a weekend, late October, early November. And he would go with me and help like carry things, and we'd have a list and I'd be ready. And we did everything in one weekend. My parents kept my kids, and we went in the fall and got it all done. And for those years that we did that, what a gift with, you know, with a mom with littles. That was so great because I came home with all the stuff and all I had to do was buy his stuff, you know? And that was a tradition that we had for probably, I'd say 8 or 9 years when the kids were little. They're bigger now, you know, it's not as hard, and you know, there's more online shopping and all that stuff, but I miss doing that with him. But I also recognize, you know, things like that, those traditions are going to change over time. So I think that's good too. That's what made it better. That was part of the self-care in that season. Yeah. So this has been so great. I'm encouraged. I'm actually looking forward to Christmas now.
Good. I'm so glad.
No, I really am. I love Christmas, but I will say I have had years, and I usually get to that point at some time every year, but I have had years that I did not enjoy. I was just so grateful kind of when it was all over. And I hear you, and I hear this like recall, and I'm like, it's time at this point, I think, to start asking myself the questions. I'm making that list because I'm like, let's make sure that I don't have unmet expectations in that, like the one big thing I wanted to do, I didn't for whatever reason, you know, and how can we identify it and make time for it. So before I let you go, though, I'm going to ask this question I pose to everybody who comes on this podcast. And that is, right now in this season, wherever you are right now, what are you listening to, reading? I love to share resources, watching, doing, anything goes that's just bringing you joy and keeping you connected to God right now. Anything?
Yes, so many things. I am a like, I don't even know how to say it, kind of a buffet style reader. So I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit. So I always have multiple things that I'm doing at the same time, which also makes me a slow reader because it takes me a really long time to get through things because a lot of
authors have 4 books on their nightstand or whatever, right? Yeah. Yes. And 2 more in their Audible.
For sure. So I am watching Margaret Feinberg's Wonderstruck on Right Now Media right now. And so it's just a video series. I'm not even doing the book that goes along with it, but just watching her, and it's bringing me delight. There's these nature scenes. She's in Canada, and it's delightful. My small group just finished in The Invisible War by Chip Ingram, and it's so eye-opening. I highly recommend it. And my other books that are on my nightstand, I actually have them with me. I'm going to show them to because I'm bad with remembering the titles. And I just said this to you recently. I was like, oh, that one book you wrote was so great. The one about the wise men and their gifts. And then I was like, but I can't.
It's a journey worth taking. Thank you for giving me a segue there and just plug my own work.
But it's a fantastic book. And it really is. I learned so much from you. So anyway, these are the books. This is The Paris Dressmaker. This is a fiction book. I don't read a lot of fiction because like you in personality, we have similar personalities. I feel like I need to be doing something productive. And if I'm reading nonfiction, it feels like I'm wasting time and I can't multitask with it. Like if I'm watching a movie, I can also fold the laundry, but I cannot fold the laundry at Lena favorite. So anyway, The Paris Dressmaker is by my favorite novelist, Kristy Cambron. She has some fantastic books, and then this one, Treasures from the Original. It's Dr. Harold J. Berry, and this one is volume 3. It's on 2 Timothy. And so this professor, he like takes apart, he like has an incredible grasp of the Greek language. And so he breaks apart verses, and here he goes through the entire book of 2 Timothy and breaks apart the verses and tells you like the meaning behind it and the background and the history. And it's incredible. I'm such a nerd for words.
I love like words.
That.
I
yes,
love
me too.
Yeah.
So I love his books. I'm just a nerd for him. It's one of those that I definitely will keep and read over and over and over. And then the last one's this one. It's a devotional. It's Finding Hope and Healing in the Midst of Grief. And my friend, also a Jesus Sisters contributor, Teresa Davis, wrote this book. It's just a raw, vulnerable, really her pouring out her heart during her grief journey. And it's a devotional, but and it is specifically, her target audience is people in a grief journey. But I'm finding so much is applicable just to everyone in the ways that we can trust God in the difficulties in our lives every day.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic.
Well, and I'll put a little plug in for a future podcast because Teresa's going to be a guest and we're going to talk specifically about grief and the holidays, actually. So that's coming up for those who are listening now and you're thinking about preparing. If part of what's been on your heart as we've talked is my heart just hurts so bad, I don't even want to listen to this. You might want to listen to Teresa because I know she's going to have some wonderful words of wisdom from somebody who's been there and what Christmas and other celebrations. I'm sorry about my dog. I thought he would quit by now, but he's just cute. It's real life. What Christmas looks like when your heart is just broken. So that's coming up too. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, me too. So Cassia's book, the new one, is 12 Ways of Christmas, Cultivate a Restful, Not Stressful Season. Available. What's your launch date?
October 4th.
October 4. And talk to us just 1 second. Where can we follow not just you, but also Jesus Sisters? Give us just a little plug for that before I let you go.
So I have a page on Facebook and Instagram, and CassiaElder.com is my website. So on Facebook, I'm Cassia Elder author, and on Instagram, it's Cassia Elder, and then Jesus Sisters. It's on Facebook and Instagram. So it's Jesus Sisters Community on Instagram is where you'll find that. And so, yes, there. And my books are available on Amazon. And I am having 2 book release events, one in Southern Indiana and one in Northwest Ohio. And awesome. So you can also get my book there at those if you are local to me, or if, Angie, you want to drive 4 hours to get a copy of my book.
Wouldn't you be surprised if I showed up there? I would love for that to be true. So yes, now I will link all of that good stuff in the show notes. And Cassia, thank you so much for this encouragement to remember that I think a lot of us look forward to Christmas, but I think a lot of us look forward to Christmas with a little asterisk, like these are the things about it that are really hard. And I think if we can sort of wrestle that feeling to the ground, that's one of the things I say all the time, and say, what about this is hard? That sometimes we can actually allow the Lord to kind of cover that with his promises, and something that was hard can actually turn into something that is quite peaceful. And even that learning process can bring us just, I don't know, it can build our trust muscle in him as we kind of surrender those things to him. So thank you so much for that really important reminder. We appreciate you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a joy.
Until next time, peace. I am so grateful for Cassia's willingness to share with us the ups and downs of her relationship with celebrating Christmas. I could so easily identify with some of the ways she set herself up for disappointment, and I'm so encouraged to hear that she has found her way to a place of more rest and less stress when it comes to planning, organizing, and celebrating Christmas. If you haven't already, I hope you'll subscribe to the Steady On podcast today. When you're subscribed, you'll automatically see the new episodes plus any bonus material. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.